Never goes live when it's supposed to go. Ah, there. Hello, everybody. Al Simpson here. I do comic books, Vampires in New Jersey, Blackjack, some other great stuff. I wanted to talk to Russell Allen about, well, first, he has a Kickstarter that is live. So I'm going to put the links. I already have your Kickstarter up there. I'm going to put the links in and everything.
Cool.
But his epic struggle to bring his vision to life. It's been, I think it's 10 years, I've heard, you said?
Yeah, 10 years.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's amazing. Very impressive. I already backed it. Anybody who hasn't backed it, go back it. It's awesome stuff. It's incredible. You jump right in, Russ. Tell us like where all this came from, because it's very hard to come up with a fully realized vision of a world, like world building. That's very hard. You see Marvel and DC constantly trying to reshift and rebuild. And what you have done is you built an entire like world universe to play in straight from your mind. So that's, to me, that's the hardest thing to do.
Yeah, I've always been a really creative person. So, I mean, back when I was a kid, when I was in like third grade, we used to get these pictures. We had to color them, and then the teacher would be like, "Hey, write a story about them." That's where I kind of got into, storytelling and creating stories. Is I'm like coloring these pictures, and I'm like making up these real intricate worlds, and just running with it. I never had a problem coming up with stuff, and I've always been really creative. So
Cool.
I guess it was about 2010. My wife asked me what I wanted for my birthday, and I was like, I want a Chromebook, because at that time I worked on an over-the-road job,
Right.
and I wanted to be able to, the one night a week that I stayed in Illinois, I wanted to be able to, write my book. I mean, this has been kind of like a 20-year venture, but, 20 years ago it was everybody saying, well, you can't make a living at doing that. And,
Yeah.
so I was like, whatever, I just brushed it off because everybody else didn't seem like it was a big deal.
Yeah.
So I finally get the Chromebook, and I'm like, I'm going to write this book. So I come up with stuff, and I had this idea of, Xenonanite Titan. So he's just a normal guy, a family guy. He's a researcher for the Space Combat Authority,
Right.
and he's doing this research. And I ran with the story, how he came across the suit, how the suit was acquired, what it was created for,
Right.
and then it ended up becoming this like 900-page novel. So I get, granted I was working, and
Right.
so I only worked on this like one day a week, and then like one day on the weekend here and there I wrote this book. So, over the span of 4 years, I amassed this almost 900-page novel that was almost done. Well, then at the end of 2014, we found out that my son was going to have open heart surgery after he was born. So it was the week before Christmas in December. He was born in March, and we found this out in December. They found it. It was probably one of the most horrific experiences, because they did the growth on her son, and they're like, we can't really get the pictures, so we're going to send you to the big hospital so you can get the pictures. So we're like, okay, no big deal. We go to the big hospital, and a doctor comes in, does the ultrasound. Another doctor comes in, and then another. So we're there for 5.5 hours. We have no clue what's going on. And the doctor comes in, and they're like, all right, we're going to take you upstairs. And we're like, what's going on? Nobody would tell us anything. So we get upstairs, and then we find out, Roger's going to have open heart surgery after he's born. They were talking one heart surgery after he was born, one at 6 months, and then one at 3 years, and he was going to be done. So we were pretty, mortified with that.
Right.
And so it was like, he's going to have three. They've been doing this for 40 years, they say. It's not that bad. It could be worse.
Right.
We'll take it one step at a time. So, we kept going and doing the growths, and they did fetal echoes twice a week for every week after that. So we were at the hospital like all the time. And they're like, oh, yeah, it's even better than we thought. He may only have to have two. So we're like, cool, this is awesome. And then he was born, and they're like, hey, everything we thought was totally wrong. He actually has this. We've only been doing this for about 6 going on 7 years.
Right.
We don't really know what the life expectancy is. The oldest kid, of course, is, 7 years old that we've done this kind of repair before.
Right.
So, it hit us pretty hard. And I had every intention of, taking the computer to the hospital with me. I'm like, I'm going to knock this out. So Roderick was born, and we ended up going to the hospital, and he has his open heart surgery at a week old. And we
Right.
spent 30 days in the hospital, but I never worked on the book because I couldn't get in the right mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. I can understand that.
And then, so at 11 months, well, actually, he went home from the hospital, and then he was born the end of March. We went home right at I think it was like the 5th of May. And
Right.
then the weekend of Mother's Day, he goes back in the hospital because he has to have a pyloromyotomy because the antibiotics they had him on ended up his stomach muscle overgrew. So long story short, we had a whole crap ton of stuff happen. Roderick had to have multiple surgeries,
Right.
and I just couldn't get in the right mindset, And then I was trying to work, and all the time that I had available to be off, I spent in the hospital. So I never really had time to work on my book. Plus, having a baby running around the house, you really don't have time for stuff.
Yeah.
Well, then we had another kid, and then Roderick had another open heart surgery. And, it was just one of those things. It's like life got so busy. And because Roderick being born, my wife, we decided instead of us both trying to take off and, passing doctor's visits back and forth and one of
Yeah.
us losing our jobs, that she could just stay home with him. I would work just for the simple fact of, no, most daycares aren't going to take on a special needs kid like our son.
Right.
It has this heart condition because they don't know what to watch for. And
Right.
if we tell them, they don't want the liability of it.
No.
So finding a daycare that was going to be affordable or that would even take him was kind of an issue. So we decided on that. So, of course, then I'm taking on extra hours, and the dream of the book faded. I don't really want to say it faded. I just was kind of like, this is never going to happen right now.
Yeah.
So, it kind of went to the wayside. I never finished the book. And then January this year rolled around. I bent over the inside of the truck to put a piece of paper in the printer, and I had this horrible pain. It was like lightning striking me on the side. I'm like, what in the world?
Right.
I was like, oh, I pulled a muscle, no big deal. Well, the following week, I'm driving down the road, and I sneezed, and I went blind for about 15 or 20 seconds. And so it was at that point, I'm like, all right, something's seriously wrong. I called my wife. I was like, hey, I'm going to drive back to the shop, or I'm going to the hospital. So you need to see if like our niece or nephew or somebody can come in and stay with the kids. So they ended up finding a mass on my liver. The following week I went, they just found out that the mass on my liver was a hemangioma, which is like a blood vessel tumor. They said they're common. They go away on their own. So we're like, oh, okay, no big deal. And they're like, but we found a 3 by 5 centimeter mass on your spine.
Right.
And so, we were pretty devastated by that because my grandpa, 5 months prior to this passed away because he had a mass in his spine. He ended up, they cut it out. They did chemo. It came back. He ended up getting sepsis, and, it was a matter of a week he was gone.
Wow.
So, for this to happen 5 months later, it's like,
Yeah, that's close.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so, and then my son, he didn't do well with it. We had all this other stuff going on. And then that happened. And so he's going to school telling his teacher, I don't want to be here because my daddy's going to die. And nobody ever said anything about it. So it was
Yeah.
hard not only going through everything that was going on, it was hard on the kids.
Yeah.
And so at the end of January, I went in and they did a PET scan, and it was Friday the 31st. Saturday morning, the results came through on my phone. I was sitting here. I was like, oh, it's probably blood work. There's no way the PET scan's back. I just had it at 3 p.m. on a Friday. There's no way Saturday morning it's back.
That's quick. Yeah, that's really quick.
And the reason why it was quick is it was a level red result. And they basically said, there's significant evidence of malignancy. Biopsy needs to be done. So my doctor, of course, was on vacation until like February 15th. So there was no communication between the other doctors and him. And, basically what it boiled down to is radiology here decided they didn't want to do the biopsy. It was so close to my spine, so close to my lungs, so close to my stomach. They were afraid of, it moving. I forgot what the word they use is for it. They were masticized or whatever it is. They were afraid it was gonna travel into my lung, or if they accidentally puncture my spine, they would paralyze me. So we went until we were supposed to go in April to get another CT scan done. They were going to monitor the size, and if the size changed, then they would do something about it. So, March I go back to work. I'm like, whatever, I use all my vacation, all my FMLA. And it was probably about mid-February, I started thinking, what am I, what do I regret? I'm starting to make my bucket list because, things aren't looking good. And, and like, I don't like to try to be a negative person, but I'm like, if something does happen to me, what am I going to leave behind? My wife doesn't have a job. They're all going to get a life insurance policy, and that's all she's going to get. And how is she going to go out and find a job with, COVID happened, everything. This is like all this other stuff in the
Yeah.
world is going on. And then
Yeah.
we've got this situation and everything's closing around. And I'm like, what do I regret not doing? And I was like, I really regret not finishing my book. I'm like, I'm going to do this. So I started Russ Explode Studios. I bought a website. I Xenonanite.com. So I started the website. I started putting up stuff about it, and I started contacting artists. I'm like, hey, I got this idea for a book. It's all pretty much wrote already, and I'm like, I want to get some pieces done for it. So I started commissioning artists to do art pieces for it, and I ended up cutting out a huge chunk in the middle of the book, and made it a little more recent times. I moved the time span up from when the original book happened up, to 6 years from now. So the book actually takes place in like 2026, about when it starts out.
Right.
And so, there's some true to life stuff in it at the beginning. And, I just rolled with it. I was like, instead of doing a 900-page book, though, I decided to split it into 3 books and do a trilogy.
Cool.
My original intentions, like I said before, was to do this 900-page book and then roll it out into a comic book series. Because, I've always been into comic books since I was probably in second grade was when I think it was second or third grade when I got my first comic book. Our teacher had this conduct cash that we got. If you were good, you did what you're supposed to, or you did something special for that day, you get this conduct cash, and at the end of the month you could spend it on something. Well, the teacher bought like X-Men comic books. So the very first comic book that I got was Uncanny X-Men. And I was like, man, this is awesome. So that's what started to get me into comic books. So when later on, when I, thought about writing the Xenonanite Titan book, I was like, man, that'd be awesome to do an origin story, write it out, in a book style, and then later on do a comic book series.
Right.
So I'm still keeping that original plan, but I decided to split the book up into 3 parts. One of the reasons why is, I love art, and I'm like, I want to show off this awesome, badass character in all of his glory, and give the reader something to help them visualize other people's perception of what the character looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So when I did the 10 pieces for the book, it was pretty much basically, here's the basis of my character, here's what he looks like, here's the color pattern of the character. But I want you to do, here's your section of the book that I want you to write. These are the Easter eggs I want you to include.
Right.
So you don't really spoil anything, but when you read the book, you're going to see, oh, now this art makes sense. So the artist did a phenomenal job. Each piece is super awesome. And they all have their own special things. Like, Wendy's, which is the one that's in the preview picture for the video.
Right.
It's more of like a light armor. And then you've got Chris McJunkin, his is a heavy armor. And then Steph did his a little different. His was more like of a free floating armor that really wasn't attached to him, but it surrounded him.
Right.
And so each artist, took inspiration from their piece of the book that I gave them and wrote and drew something fantastic.
Right.
And so I drew inspiration from some of the stuff that they did and included it in my book. So this book ended up being a little bit shorter than what I wanted it to be. I was planning on like a 280, 300-page book, but when it was all said and done, and after the rewrite happened, where the book left off, I felt was a great place to stop. I felt like if I went on any further, book 2 wouldn't start in a good place.
Right. Let me play your video here.
All right.
Give people some flavor. Let me we'll go full screen and we'll crank it up here. Beautiful stuff, man. Very well done. Did you cut that yourself?
Yes,
Yeah.
I made that video myself,
Yeah,
and
I remember you
it's like,
talking about it when we spoke earlier this year, and it's perfect. Really nice.
yeah, it slowly evolved throughout the years. So I started the video, and as I got pieces from the artists, I started adding those artists in and their pieces.
Right.
So it was kind of cool to watch the evolution of it throughout the year. You know, each time I posted it, it just got more and more epic. And I mean, it's phenomenal. Like it hits me in the feels every time I watch it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's awesome because it's really cool to finally see after all this stuff has happened
Right.
that I finally did what I wanted to do and I made something great.
Yeah.
And and that was part of the basis of why I started Russ Explode Studios. The basis of my show is I do creator interviews Sunday and Tuesday. I've had you on for Vampires in New Jersey. I think I'm up
Yeah.
to like 80 interviews now that I've done.
Yeah.
And each time I have somebody on, that was one of the big things that we hit on is, what did you find inspiration in? And your inspirational story, I remember it exactly, is you got kicked out of the band. You're like, I'm never going to play again. And your friend said, hey, come with me. The problem wasn't you, it's the band.
Yeah.
And because that guy said that to you, we have Vampires in New Jersey. We have Blackjack. You've made movies. You've produced soundtracks. And that's what the heart of Russ Explode Studios Books with Heart's all about. There's some there's some symbolism in it just because of the fact of my son with his heart surgeries, but it's also to symbolize my passion for my writing. I have my heart in it,
Yep.
and I want people to take inspiration from the story and say, man, this guy's had it bad. His son's had all these heart surgeries and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
he found out he had cancer, and he started a freaking business, a company, and I wanted to leave behind a legacy. If something happened to me, I wanted to die knowing that
Yep.
I did what I wanted to do. I produced my book,
Yep.
and my kids could, later on, maybe my son would pick it up and say, I know where my dad was going with this, and he could finish the story.
Yeah.
And so, I want people to find inspiration, and I want people to see the inspiration because the whole thing of the show that when I do it at the end of the day, you never know what kind of a bad day a person has had. And when they come across the show and they stop and they watch it, they might need to hear that message.
Yep.
And just like your friend came and came to your side and said, Alton, the problem isn't you, the problem is the band. If that wouldn't have happened, who knows where you would be at today, or if any of the stuff
Yeah.
that you've done would have ever come to pass.
Yeah,
And I
that,
wanted,
that gave me some creative spirit back. You put all this energy out into the world, and you want it when it comes back to you, it reinvigorates your energy with it. But if it doesn't come back to you, then you kind of lose it a little bit.
yeah,
So, and you've been battling and battling and battling through life, and I think that's the integrity that comes through in your story. You know what it's like to suffer. You know what it's like to go for it and have to keep going for it every day. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And
and that's what made Xenonanite Titan even better. This rewrite, um, the book was really good at first, and I
Mhm.
really liked it. But I'm gonna tell you, it could not get any better than what it is right now. I had the emotion, when it needed to be an emotional scene. I have, the emotion behind it.
Yep.
And everybody that I sent it to so far, I mean, has nothing but raving things to say about it. Brian K. Morris, one of the well-known authors,
Yeah.
publishers, I sent a copy to him.
Yep.
And here's one of those things where you never know when somebody needs to hear something. So a great story about me sending the book to him was as I was going on an indie event with him.
Right.
And I think I've only told the story one other time, but I was having a bad day. We had just found out I was getting ready to go in and have another CT done to find out about the mass. So I had found out, I guess it's been like 6 weeks ago finally, that I don't have cancer. They
Yeah.
ended up finding out I got 11 bulging discs and 2 blown discs in my back, which
Right.
I'll take that over
Right.
cancer any day.
Right.
Um, but I was having a bad day. I was hurting. This whole time everything's been going on, they've been telling me there's no reason you should be in this much pain.
Yeah.
Every day was a struggle to walk. I couldn't even hardly stand up when I get out of bed.
Mhm.
So I was having a horrible day at work, and I'm like, I literally was standing there in Warrenton at the TA delivering oil, and I'm like, I don't think I can wake up another day and feel like this again. I was just having a terrible day.
Right.
And 3 days before that, I had talked to Brian, and I was like, hey, I sent you a copy of the book. And he's like, I got 4 projects I'm working on right now. I'll take a look at it.
Yeah.
And, we're going live Saturday. I'll read the first few chapters and get, a basis of what your story's about and, see how I feel about your writing.
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So, 2 or 3 days had passed, and I was having this bad day. And, I get a message on my phone, and, I pull out my phone. I was like, oh, it's Brian, so I'm like, hey, what, we're going live tomorrow. What's going on? He's like, hey, I just wanted to let you know, I just finished the book. And he's like, I love it. He goes,
Yeah.
I was blown away. He goes, it was really unexpected. You did something great here. Keep at it.
Right.
And you're going to do good things.
Mhm.
And it's like, that was what I needed to hear. I was at this point where I've been working and working and working, and there's been nothing coming back on it. And,
Yeah.
that was what I needed to hear. And that's what put the wind back in my sails. It was like,
Right.
here's a guy that I respect that, puts out a lot of works. He reviews people's stuff. He has this huge Rising Tide publication.
Yeah.
And it's like for him to say, hey, I was going to read a few chapters of your book, but I finished it and I was really excited to see what happens. And I really want to know what happens next. That was what I needed to hear. So, and it really makes all the work that I put in this book worth it. And I can't express enough how excited I am for people to get the books. I'm not in it for the money.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people scoff at it when I say that. They're like, oh, whatever. Man, I'm in it for the relationships. And if you come and watch my shows on Russ Explode Studios Books with Heart, after a few shows, you're going to understand. I'm not in it for the money. I'm not in it for the fame.
Yeah.
I cannot wait for you to read this story and people to take inspiration from it, people to be entertained by it, and I can't wait to talk to people about it. If I sell 200 copies of the book and I make $10, I'm fine with that as long as people enjoy the book. And if I go to a con and somebody walks up and hands me a copy of my book and says, "Hey, will you sign this for me?" That means more to me than making money off the book.
Yeah.
And
I have a friend in England. His name's Joe Scott, and he's listening right now. Which I guess it's super late there, Joe, for you to be up working. But he had a question. He wanted to know if you had any paid samples on the Kickstarter.
any of the
just a regular page out of the book.
No, I do not.
Okay. Because I know you have some art, artists, the covers and prints and things. Tell me about the how you ended up working with all these different artists. Obviously, we know some of the same people because that's how I, met you.
Yeah.
But tell me how that came to be.
So Jason which is on there right now, I met him.
Had like the Super Friends and the Avengers on there of artists. It's some brilliant people. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, so like Jason I knew him through Hooked on Comics, which is the comic shop that I buy through.
Right.
Excuse me. And they were personal friends with him. He is one of the artists for Necroman.
Okay.
And so that's how I met him. I met him, I guess, about 2 years ago.
Right.
And he went live on there, and they were talking about Necroman, so I bought a copy of it.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up liking the book, so I started following him.
Yeah.
So David Faught, I recently met him when he joined Artist Alley Shopping Network. He's another one of the artists. And, Evanette, I just randomly met her. Chris McJunkin, I knew him for a little while. So part of where I know these artists from is I started Art Exposure going on 3 years ago. I've always been kind of involved in the comic book industry and in the book industry. And, 3 years ago, I started really trying to help push artists and get them to go live. Finney the Great was the one you just scrolled past, was the they were the first person that I had live on Art Exposure.
Right.
I finally can. I was like, "Hey, you want to go on and show off your work? I really think people would want to see your work." And they're like, "Oh yeah, I guess I'll go live." And so they went live, and then here we are. It's been, I guess, now going on 2 years ago since they had went live, and
Mhm.
they've got 40,000 followers watching their art.
Wow.
And I don't say that to brag about it. I say that because you never know what small gesture you're going to do that'll push somebody to do great things. And,
Right.
that's what a lot of these artists need. Ed Williams, he's another artist that I know through Hooked on Comics. He's one of their patrons there. I ended up finding out that he's an artist. I asked him to commission a Vampirella piece for me. So
Wow.
whenever I decided, to actually do the book,
Right.
and he was the first person I contacted. I was like, Ed, I think you do really good things. I've been
Right.
trying for 2.5 years to get him to go live. So he did that piece for me. And actually, I guess it was probably 3 months after I started Russ Explode Studios Books with Heart, he got on and drew live for the first time.
Cool.
So it took me 3 years, but I finally got him to draw out live online. And, we had a really good turnout for it. People
Yeah.
really enjoyed seeing it.
Yeah.
And I guess, that's one thing, I always try to look for the positivity and everything. That's the one good thing that happened with COVID-19. It gave people more of a, well, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. It encouraged them more to go online and have more of an online presence, just because
Right.
you can't go to cons. You can't,
Yep.
that was something that Ed did. He would go and set up a table somewhere and people would come by and buy prints and stuff from him. You can't
Right.
do that stuff right now. And
Not at
things
all.
are about to get a whole lot worse. They're talking about shutting down around here. I know several states are shut down. And
Yeah.
so artists and authors and creators are like, okay, what do I do now? I can't sell my stuff. Nobody's visiting my website because nobody knows about it because they don't see the banner at the con. What do I do? And
Yeah.
that was when, like, right when I started doing my shows, which originally was, hey, the 10 artists that I commissioned to do pieces, which now turned into 13 artists,
Right.
and possibly going to be a 14th. So there's going to be things to come.
Wow.
I'm still building on this Kickstarter. There's going to be a ton of stuff that's going to get added over the next few days.
Right.
So, that was when I started doing the shows. I was like, hey, Ed, do you want to go live with me? So Ed went live. And then I had Wendy on. So their friends started messaging me, which I watched. It wasn't like I didn't know who they were. Like,
Right.
hey, when are you going to have me on your show? And I'm like, it's not really a show. I just was having the artist that did a piece for the book come on. So, I could, get their name out there, and, maybe somebody else would want to use them. And I'm
Hmm.
like, sure, why not? And then it turned into the point I had to go. I started out doing Tuesdays only. And then it got to the point, all right, I'm going to start doing Sundays and Tuesdays because there were so many people asking.
Yeah.
And so now it's a little bit of both. I ask people and people come to me. Sunday, I've got a show. We're going to be talking about a really cool project. Tuesday, I got another show talking about another really cool project.
Yeah.
Even though I got a Kickstarter running, I'm still going to promote other people's stuff because it's what I do. I don't do it because I expect something out of it. I do it because I love to share other people's work. I love to see what makes them tick.
Right.
I love to have the chance to talk to these artists. When you go to a con, that's the only trade-off, about cons is you don't get the personal one-on-one experience.
No.
Like the people listening or watching right now, they don't get, okay, I see a Kickstarter, or hey, I see this guy at a con. I don't really know anything about him. I just, I like this book, and
Yeah.
but this gives you a chance to get to know, what kind of stuff does this person like. I can ask him any question I want, and at any time, and I have, a chance to connect with that person, and so that's what's really the good thing that came out of COVID.
Right.
And so, we that's how this project came together. And David Harrigan did a phenomenal piece. Armando Ramirez did
Yep.
a phenomenal piece. Every single piece in this book came out really good. There's several pieces like CB Zane's piece, there's a lot of Easter eggs in it. Finney's piece has like 5 or 6 Easter eggs in it.
Right.
And David Fouts has an Easter egg. I mean, you see the leg and you go, why is one leg different than the other?
Right.
And there's a reason for all that. And once you read the story, you'll understand each piece of the story is going to make sense.
Right. Yeah. That's really cool, man. That's
Now,
how
as
you.
far as the page samples go, I don't have any page samples for it. I just recently got the edited version of the book back, so I was floating around. Like I sent you and Wendy and Carrie,
Right.
Carrie Ann's Steph's wife. She read it and she really liked it. Steph's read it.
Yeah.
Wendy loved it.
Yeah.
I
I'll be
floated
honest.
out.
I started it, and then the computer I was reading it on, the software closed up on me like 10 pages in. So I got to go back in, and I was actually having trouble with the interface. But I have a super old computer, so that's probably what was the problem.
Well, see, that's the problem I had with Google Chrome, which is why I went to Dropbox. Dropbox doesn't have that issue.
Right. Right.
But every computer's different.
Yeah. Yeah. My kids are laughing at me. They're constantly telling me to get a new computer. And I'm sure I'll throw it out eventually. But I've written so much stuff on it and had such good luck with it. You know what I mean? I'm kind of a little.
Yeah, you're partial to it.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, it's like slipping on a good pair of broken in jeans. You know.
You know, Alton, my Chromebook is 10 years old.
Yeah.
The Chromebook that I wrote this book on.
Yeah.
You know what I launched this book from?
Yeah.
My Chromebook.
Chromebook. Yeah. It's just a natural progression. So,
you know, it started there and it ended there.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. Yeah, that's cool, man.
But yeah, I'm super excited about this project, man. It's great. I maybe over the next week, once I get through the edited portion of the first, I'll at least put the first 2 chapters up.
Okay.
A lot of what people describe it as, you know, it's a sci-fi book. It's got a lot of action. It's fast-paced. It's easy to read, and it gives you the information you need to know, but it doesn't overload you with going from thing to thing to thing. Like when you read the book, you're going to have questions as you read it. You're like, oh, he didn't explain this. Well, you know, that's like my editor, Katrina, said whenever I went live with the book, Wendy and Katrina got on with me. And you know, that was something that Katrina said about the book. She goes, you know, here I am, I'm putting a note in, hey, you know, you need to explain this a little more. And then I would go down 2 paragraphs and it's like, oh, no, that was answered. So I'd have to go back and delete the note. And she's like, so finally, I think I just started leaving them just because I had nothing to say about the book that needed, you know, more explanation. And, you know, I explained the things that needed to be explained, but I also left a fine line to where there was stuff that left to the imagination. So, you know, that's one of the cool things about reading a book. You know, you read it, you interpret it in your mind. You see, you know, examples like with Steph's art. You know, one of these artists may hit on how you see the character, or you may have your own view of it. That's like, you know, even with Wolverine. Some people, when you say Wolverine, they think of the yellow and black cartoon style Wolverine, or some people think of Hugh Jackman. And so, you know, maybe one of these pieces, somebody will pick up on it and go, that's how I see the character as I read the book. Or they may have their own interpretation.
Yeah. I find that with a lot of my stuff. People get their own, you know, idea of the character, and there's different ways that they look at it. And it's usually different in how I think of it, which helps me broaden the character, you know, think about the character in a different way.
And the way that Brian described the book, too, when he talked about it, is he said, you know, it's more of like an old time, you know, one of the pulp fiction, like a space pulp magazine. You know, that's the kind of story, the way it lays out. This is not some like fast paced, super futuristic and, you know, mumbo jumbo. This is like the way we used to like things to be wrote. The way we used to like movies like Terminator and RoboCop and, you know, Star Wars and, you know, everything now is just like rehashed garbage. This goes back to the old way of storytelling. And you know, if you're my age, you know, I'm mid-30s, I came in towards the end of it, but you know, I find that people that predate me really enjoy the book just because of the fact that it has an original feel to it. It's all new. There's nothing that's been recycled in it. You know, it's a family story. It takes place with Raziel, and the main characters is Raziel Stevens, his wife Allison, his son Robert, and his daughter Natalie. You know, he gets called off an assignment to work on this top secret project that he's been working on for a little over a year, and something has happened. They came across a call. And so the SCA gets worried that something's going to happen. They call him in and say, hey, you need to finish this project. And oh, by the way, we need you to turn this project into this and militarize it. So, you know, that kind of gives you a little bit of the gist of how the story starts out. You know, he gets
Right.
called off, and you know, an accident happens, and you know, he ends up in the situation he's in. And that's what this basically is. This is the origin story of Raziel Stevens. You know, it's like, you know, I didn't want to write a comic without explaining things beforehand. I mean, it'd be like watching or reading The Punisher and going, why is this guy going around killing people for no reason?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not how you start out a story. You start out a story with, hey, this guy had a family and this mobster came and killed his whole family. So now he
Right.
wants vengeance against this
Right.
guy. So he's taking them out one by one until he
Yeah.
gets the leader.
Yeah. Context
That's how,
is important. Very important.
yeah. Yeah, or like, you know, Wolverine. That is my favorite example to use because it was totally worthless for them, you know, 15 years later, 10 movies later, they're like, all right, let's do X-Men Origins Wolverine. And you know, it was really funny because I always use it as an example. And then Tom Hutchison used it as an example the other day. And he's like, and it was so funny what he said because he goes, you know, they did X-Men Origins Wolverine. He's like, who cares? At
Yeah.
this point, nobody cares about his origin story.
Yeah.
We've seen so
Totally.
many books on it.
Yeah.
And so, and I was like, you know what? That's the perfect way to word it because that's not that's how I wanted my book to be. I wanted you to fall in love with Raziel, understand Raziel's struggles, understand everything about the suit, why he got the suit, why the suit was made, where it came from, what it's capable of doing. So that when you read the comic book that we work on, that you understand why he is the way that he is, what
Right.
happened to him. And I don't ever play him off that he's the hero either. So that's the main thing in the story is there's twists and turns around every corner. Just when you think you know what's going on in the story, I guarantee you're not going to see what's coming.
Right.
Wendy didn't see it. Katrina, my editor, didn't see it. They were all like, you know, just when I'm like, this is what's going to happen, I went on and it's like, what in the world is going on right now? That is my big thing about storytelling or watching a movie or reading a book. I don't want to know what's going to happen. My wife gets so mad at me when we sit down and watch a movie because I'll be like, oh, yeah, this is what happens. She's like, oh, you don't know that. And then that's what happens. She's like, you ruin every movie. And I'm like, well, they should do a better job of storytelling. I
Yeah.
want to be, and when we watch a movie that does that, so like, for example, Unbreakable. I love that movie. I've loved that movie ever since it came out because the movie's just beautifully done. It's great. It's a little slow burner,
Yeah.
but it has a great story. It has a great backstory to it, and it keeps you on your toes.
Right.
Split was a good movie. It was another one that kept you on your toes.
Yeah.
And then I'm not going to ruin it, but Mr. Glass,
Yeah.
when it got to the end of that movie, I did not see that coming at all.
That's good. M. Night would be happy to hear that.
Yeah.
I met him once at a Philadelphia film event to get more funding. Like Marvel is in Atlanta because Georgia gives them a lot of funding, you know, to bring business to the state, and then that just makes more business. And the Philadelphia Film, I forget what they're called, but Institute or whatever, they had an event down where Rocky ran up the stairs in Philadelphia. And I was born in Philly, and I live in Jersey, right near there. So I went down for that, and he just happened to be there. And he was busy, you know, doing his thing. And it started raining a little bit, and he gave a great speech. And then he's friends with one of the Philadelphia newscasters. And I started talking to the newscasters, and he said, "Let me introduce you to my buddy M. Night." So I talked to him for, you know, a good while. Really nice guy. And then I was like, "Oh, I wanted to get a selfie, but it's starting to rain." And he's like, "Well, my daughters are right over there, and I have the umbrella, so I got to be a good dad. But I'm going to take a picture with you first." And I was like, "That is really cool of him to do that." You know what I mean? He just seemed like a very personable, down to earth, Oscar nominated, multi-film, you know, genius. You know, with the twists. You know, because I know you write and I write, and we know how hard it is to take people down one path and then totally surprise them.
Yep.
You know what I mean, it's without
it's hard
it
not
being,
to be predictable. There's
right,
been so much stuff done already.
right. So
Like every story pretty much has been told, and everybody tells it in a different way. But
yeah,
and that's the part that's hard about our job is, you know, to do that, to make a story that's fresh, something that has a great feel, and not only being unpredictable, but making the characters sort of relatable and you can empathize with them.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to there's so many different aspects of the book when you're writing, or even in a comic book when you're writing it. The characters have to be relatable. You have to be able to empathize with them, and you have to be surprised at what they do. You know,
Yep.
just when you think you understand the character, you got to throw in something crazy.
Right.
And that's kind of what happens in this book, you know, as the origin story of Raziel. It's going to play out over the next 2 books and lead off where the comic book's going to begin. We won't go back and do anything off the original trilogy. And once it ends, it's over. We're never coming back to that again.
Right.
So, you know, the comic book will be a fresh new idea. It'll be a continuation of the story. And it'll be nice because if somebody sees the comic book in the comic book store and go, where did this character come from? You know, hey, he wrote a trilogy before that. It's really good. If you're going to read this, you have to read that because it is awesome and you're going to love the character.
Right.
You know, and so that's kind of where I wanted to go. And my other thing is, you know, with this project, when I vetted the artists, I went with people that I talked to about the project that got excited about it.
Right.
They were like, man, you know, this sounds awesome, you know, and then I gave them their part of the chapter and I gave them a choice. You know, I have this piece that needs to be done and I need this piece that needs to be done. CB had a choice between the piece that David Harrigan did and the piece that he did, and he chose the piece that he did, and he did a phenomenal job. He knocked it out of the park. Now, had I said, oh, you had to do this other piece, who knows how well the piece that CB did would have turned out.
Right.
And that's why I gave the artist a choice. I'm like, what do you feel your strong point is out of these pieces? And I want you to do it in the way you see the character. Right. And it really shows. And it showed, you know, that was one thing that Yvonne said. She said, you know, it's not very often you work with somebody that will actually give you your section of the book to where you can read it and know about what you're drawing. You know, her piece is phenomenal. That's one of the newest things that I let out of the bag. So for the last 9 months, it has been kept secret. Every time that the art has come up and people have asked who that is, I have never once let it slip, and I had to catch Yvonne because she almost gave it away on one of the live feeds. But it is Wyvernite, and so that is a character that you will meet midway through the book. Right there he is, in all of his fantastic glory. There's Raziel Stevens, Xenonanite Titan, writing on the back of him.
Mm-hmm.
Every piece has its part to play, and that's what's so good about this book is you're buying book 1. But it's not that I don't know where I'm going next. I know where I'm going from start to finish. I have the book is done from start to finish.
Right.
There are some rewrites taking place.
Sure.
But I can go through and this is exactly where I wanted book 1 to end. I know where book 2 is going to end, so I'm going to start where this left off and end there, and I'm going to do book 3, and then the story's played out. You know, a lot of people will start writing and then they'll publish it and then they have no idea where they're going to go next. I can promise you that's not the case here.
Right.
This story's already been told. It's just being wrote out again.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, this is pretty incredible what you're doing. I mean, the Kickstarter. How do you find Kickstarter? This your first one?
So I've backed. The first time I backed a project was for Jason Zoe. It was for Necroman when Necroman issue 2 came out. That's how I kind of found Kickstarter. I didn't even know Kickstarter existed at that point.
Yeah.
Like I'd been in the comic book industry and I'd never even heard of it. Yeah. And somebody's like, "Oh, you've never heard of Kickstarter?" Like, "Oh, you get on there and you know, you back the book of it funds. It's kind of like pre-ordering a movie or a game." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that sounds pretty cool." So I can go and look at what the project's about. So I went and checked out Necroman. I was like, "All right, cool. You know, I'll back it." And that was the very first project that I backed was Necroman 2. I guess it was last May.
Right.
And so since then, I've backed a ton of projects. That's one of the ways I met Wendy Steenchainer was through Naughty Fairies.
Right.
And that's how I met you was through Wendy because Wendy did a piece for Vampires in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And also CB, I knew him. He did a piece for Vampires in New Jersey. Yeah. So it's like, you know, that's what the great thing about this industry is you meet really great people.
Yep.
And then you meet the great people that they know. And before too long, you've got this great circle of awesomeness that just can help push you to be the best that you can be. And that's why I decided to do an indie publish. You know,
Yeah.
I get a lot of drawback when I talk to people of, well, why are you doing it on Kickstarter? Why don't you do what normal people do and get an agent? Why don't you do what normal people do and go through a publisher to do it? And it's like, I want to do it the way I want to do it, how I want to do it, just like Alton does it. He goes into the comic book shop and drops off his books that they ordered, and they say, hey, our customers want to trade. Oh, okay, I can do that. You go home, you set it up, you print a trade, and the next thing you know that you can give the customers what they want.
Yeah.
And so I use you as an example because you put it perfectly. You can do whatever you want. If somebody said, like, so for my campaign, I got some flack about doing an art book. Oh, I don't know why you're doing an art book. The book has the art in it. Why would you want to do an art book? The art book's a little different than it's not just the art in the book. Each piece has a bio on the artist. I want people to know a little bit about it. When you see Wendy's piece and you love it, well, Wendy does Naughty Fairy Stripper Assassins.
Right.
When you see CB Zane's piece, oh, CB Zane's piece is beautiful. What does CB Zane do? Oh, he does End of the Suck. He does the Mighty Might.
Yep.
He does Scorpiana. I'm going to give you a little bit of rundown of what projects that artist does, and who they are, and you're also going to get the preliminaries that aren't in the book. You're going to get the pencil sketches, the ones that I have. You're going to get the ink, and then you're going to get the color version, and you're going to get my preliminaries. That was one of the biggest things that I heard people say, and I heard other people say it was stupid. But if people want it, cool. If they don't want it, then it's in there. But there are people that want it, and so by self-publishing this, I'm able to do, based on the feedback I've heard over the 9 months, I've included the stuff that I heard a lot from different people. And I'm like, okay, there is more than one person that wanted this. There's an audience for it. So it's available here if you want it.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. Being able to react to what people want is a lot easier as an indie. It just is. There's no level of bureaucracy and, you got to meet with 20, 30 people before a decision is made or any of that. It's just that people say they want it. It's within my ability to do it. I'll give it a shot. The demand is kind of already there.
Well, see, that's the thing.
And that instant feedback,
Yeah, well, and see, that's the thing. So in March, when it slowly leaked out and everybody was telling everybody about it, it went from, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, to the next thing I knew, I had like 80 people talking about it. And I was like, oh, well, I guess there's no turning back now. I already let the cat out of the bag. But when they asked me, they said, when do you think this will be done? I said, I got it. My goal is set for November. I'm shooting for October, but I'm leaving November open in case, because I had all this health stuff going on. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't want to rush myself and have a negative impact on the end product.
Right.
It's November 17th. I launched.
Yeah.
Going through a publisher, and the publisher says, okay, we're going to sign a 1-year contract on this, that we have the rights to this, and we're going to publish it. Yeah. So everybody knows about this project already, and a year goes by and they don't end up publishing it.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
It happens all the time. Michaela Jade, one of the authors, that went live, came on the show a few weeks ago that we talked. It happened to her. She got burned.
Yeah.
They said everybody was excited about this book, and then she turned it over to the publisher, signed the contract. They had the rights to it, and they sat on it for a year and didn't do anything with it.
Yeah.
So by the time she was writing another book onto it that people were excited about this, everybody already forgot about this book she put all that work into.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that to happen.
Disappointing, It can be very disappointing. But Kickstarter's opened a lot of doors, even for me as a guy who was in stores and doing cons. I got introduced to an entirely new bunch of artists. And then, like I said, I met people like you, and just the circle's gotten a lot bigger. And then, like you said, with COVID, we've had to innovate online and learn how to do new ways of reaching people and new ways of doing things. So I really feel like next year is going to be a crazy good year for everybody, because things will progress. We'll get over COVID. They already said a first vaccine could come out as early as Friday for emergency use to senior citizens and healthcare workers, who are most vulnerable. Once we get over that, going into the warm weather next year, I just see it's like we all worked out all winter and we have all these new muscles. And we're finally going to get to run and do what we do going towards, through the summer of next year.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very, very exciting. It really is.
And so, yeah, it's going to be awesome. And another thing I've been trying to let people know too is, like I said, the book's already written. It already has its start and its finish.
Right.
I have already started writing book 2 before this even hit Kickstarter. I'm 2 chapters in on it.
Good.
I estimate that, by the time this book gets into your hands, it won't be but maybe 4, 5, 6 months after, you get this book, that book 2 will be hitting the shelves.
That's good.
The Kickstarter shelves.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Just, space it out, pace yourself, and then hit your marks.
Yeah, and that's the thing, I don't want people to get this and be like, all right, will this story ever get finished? It's definitely going to
That's the other thing, yeah.
And
that's an problem. I had store owners tell me that. They're like, yeah, I get a lot of guys. They do that first issue. They're so excited. I'm excited. The customer's excited. And then, everything goes sideways and they never get to more issues. And then the customer's all, I love this comic. Why can't I have more? And
it's a year and a half before issue 2 comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the worst. You get something that, I'm passionate about this project. I really believe in it. I think it's great. I think it's something fresh that everybody can enjoy.
Yeah.
And I don't want people to have to worry about, okay, well, have you started writing the book? Is it going to be a year and a half before book 2 comes out? Because I don't want to buy the book and then be sitting here off this huge cliffhanger wondering what's going to happen next. No, that's not the case. I plan on at least...
You're making me feel guilty now because Vampires took off on Kickstarter. I haven't been able to focus on my other titles. So I literally have people, especially my local store, Ron's, the first place I sold my comics here in South Jersey, Ron's Comic World. I guess I did Blackjack 1 and 2, and I wrote 5 Blackjacks up front. And then Werewolves of Brooklyn 1 and 2. Really, it's like a giant issue, but it was so long. The owner was like, "You really should split that.
Break it up."
This ain't 1978. We don't really do giant size versions of comics anymore. Not as much. He's like, if you make it big, you just call it a graphic novel. But yours is like kind of in between, so split it. So I have people subscribe to those 2, and they're, Vampires took off on Kickstarter. So, when you're indie and you're small, your business model goes where it goes and where the demand is. And, I cranked out, I think I did 3 issues of Vampires this year, which is a lot, but it's at the detriment of the other ones. So I'm looking forward to next year being able to balance a little better and get back to, presenting the comics I want, because Werewolves came out in like February, but COVID has thrown everybody a loop. I know if this was a normal year, I would have done some cons. I would have gotten into more stores, and I was planning on doing a Kickstarter anyway. So the whole business model would have grown, out, but it's contracted due to the fact that the stores were having problems and
they were shuttered for months.
I just recently started contacting some of them, and some, the ones that have been around a long time are doing better than the ones that are newer because they have a bigger base of, regular customers and they can weather, a storm. But it's hard on everybody. It's just hard on the whole industry. So, but it has made us strong in other ways, like I said before, and that's going to come. That's going to come in handy next year. It really is. It really is. But Russ, I appreciate you taking the time. Every time I see you post, I repost. I'm not on Facebook all the time, but when I am on, I'll shoot you out to everybody who buys my stuff or listens to me.
Man, I really appreciate that. I'm excited. I cannot wait for people to read the story. Anybody that wants to have me on, I will be on. I will talk about this book from sun up till sundown because I believe in it 100% that I guarantee you're not going to know what happens. Yeah. And I guarantee it is great. It's fresh. It's not the same rehashed Marvel and DC trash that's been
Yeah.
done 700 times. You know, it has a start and it has a finish. And
Yeah.
when I do the comic book series has a start and finish. I already know where I want to start it out at and where I want to end it at. It's not going to be but maybe 10 or 15 issues. And there may be some spinoffs that come on it from some of the other characters in the book,
Right.
or to go back
That's
to the
good.
origin story. You know, I have some backstories. You know, if somebody says, you know, like, this is just, you know, hypothetical if Wyvernite ends up leaving off halfway through the story.
Right.
And somebody comes up to me and says, well, what happened to Wyvernite the whole time the rest of this happened? And then
Yeah.
I get 10 or 20 other people that ask me that.
Right.
I can do a spinoff comic on something like that.
That's
And that's totally hypothetical.
smart,
That may or
man.
may not happen. So
Yeah. Yeah. Keep yourself open to possibilities, because your story begets other stories, and certain characters will grow to the point where, hey, I could do an entire, you know, series of different things with that character because there's an interest in it, and I have ideas, you know.
and the
You can
guy
run
that you were saying, I didn't see it come through in the chat. You said he was listening in, but I don't see. Oh yeah, there is
Yeah,
comments. My
Joe.
bad.
Yeah, yeah. He was saying that his girlfriend does the same thing as my wife and your wife, and that we sit there and we figure the movie out before the end, because we're thinking as writers, we're like, well, this should probably be it, and it's like, what? You're kidding.
Joe, I'm confident enough in the book. I'll tell you this: send me a friend request. I will message you and I will send you the first 2 chapters. I'll do what I did to my wife and what I did to Wendy Steenshiner. So I'll leave off on this. I don't mean to keep going on, but this is a funny story. I do have to tell this. So
Good.
I wrote the book. I wrote the first 2 chapters out. Like I said, everything was already wrote out, but I rewrote it into the first 2 chapters.
Right.
And I have this problem. So I work all day. I'll get home. I'll get a shower. The kids will go to bed.
Right.
And I'll sit there for an hour and a half, and I'll just sit there and fidget. I'll be listening to music on my headphones. I'll write 2 or 3 words.
Right.
And I haven't got into the zone yet. And so it's not until like 10:30 or 11 o'clock that I get in the zone, and I just start flowing writing, and I just roll with it, and I'm going, and I'm like, oh crap, it's like 12:45 at night, and I got to be up at 3 o'clock for work. So that happened one night, and I was getting ready to start chapter 3, and my wife hadn't read any of the of what I had started writing, and so I was
Right.
like, hey, read this, see what you think about it. I'm gonna go get a shower.
Oh, Louis Torres just came on.
Hey, what's going on, Lewis? Thanks for the hat, buddy. There's the Piggly Wiggly. They give me a hard time about my camo hat all the time, and somehow some Piggly Wiggly got brought up, and the next thing you know, Luis Torres is sending me a Piggly Wiggly hat. So
Yeah, I go to Piggly Wiggly all the time. When I'm in North Carolina, my parents are from Jacksonville and Fayetteville, so Piggly Wiggly is like my hangout. It's good.
so
Good food. Go ahead.
so I get out of the shower, and you know I'm drying off, and uh, she throws the bathroom door open, and she's like, "You are not stopping there." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And I knew full well what she was talking about, but I was just playing it off like I'm, you know, had no idea what she's talking about. She's like, "I know what you did. You went to the next page and put the header for chapter 3, and you cannot leave it off there." So I was like, oh, good. I elicited a reaction. You were that engrossed in the story that you got an emotional enough rage
Yeah,
that I stopped there
sure.
that you wanted more. That's what I needed to hear. So then I sent that to Wendy Steenshiner.
Right.
And I was like, all right, what is Wendy gonna do?
Yeah.
And Wendy had pretty much the same reaction. She's like, why did you put chapter 3 and not write anything? I was
Yeah.
like, I wanted to see if my wife's reaction was legit or she was just pulling my leg. I was like, obviously, I hit a few nerves with it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
for the next 2 months, do you know what I heard? Every time I was online, you know, saying hi to Wendy when she was on, or
Yeah.
I was on Steph's show and she got on there and seen me commenting. Why aren't you writing right now? I want to know what happens next. Get off the internet and get back to writing. I'm like, I'm on break.
Ed Williams says hello too.
Hey Ed, what's going on, buddy?
Hashtag Teen Titan. Hashtag inspiration. So
Yeah, and you know
that's
what?
the man.
Anybody, since Ed's here, and also Luis Torres, Codex Entertainment LLC. Like I said, always promoting. he has a new book coming out. It's a collaboration of several different people. It'll be dropping next year. Keep a lookout for Nebula Pearl. And also Lily the Demoness Chapter 4 just finished on Kickstarter earlier this year. So it's another good book if you want to look into it. It starts out with Whispers in Necropolis, and then it switches over. And then Ed's artworks on Facebook. Go check him out. Dude does phenomenal Harry Potter artwork. Like, if you go back on Russ Exploded Studios and you look back like a month or two, you'll find the video that I did with him recently. And it is freaking amazing. Like, everybody just dies for his Harry Potter art. And I always have to tell him, you're not going to get it because it's his wife's, but you can get a print of it.
That's cool. That's very cool. Is there any more you want to talk about? Any more shout outs?
No, I just, like I said, I'm on my phone. Usually I have my computer. I didn't have time to grab it because I ended up getting off late. So usually I can see them all.
Yeah, it came out real clear. This is on Facebook, but there's also a clip on, you can share it on Facebook from my Vampires of New Jersey page, but it also is on YouTube. So if you want to share it from there too.
Okay, cool.
Reheads Productions on YouTube. But Russ, you're a big-hearted guy. You're in Texas?
No, I'm in Missouri. Lewis is in Texas.
Oh, okay. Where are you at?
Union, Missouri.
All right, Missouri. You go to C2E2?
Yes, sir. I went last year. I didn't go this year, though, because I'm like, are you guys high at the end of February, like when it's the coldest part of the year?
Yeah, it was brutal.
March 23rd, when they had it last year?
Yeah.
Last year it was cold, but I can only imagine.
I went and, I mean, like, I was waiting for my Uber outside, and I was like, this is a little nippy. You know what I mean? But it was fun. Indoor. I was at the hotel connected to the location. So once I got in there, I was like swimming in warm water the whole time. But
because you got the Hilton and the Garden and the Marriott. They're both attached to McCormick Plaza.
Yeah, I got lucky. My wife travels for work, and she had a deal with the hotel to get me right in there. But I'll be out your way. Once we're post COVID and everything, and we'll hang out.
Well, you did hear that C2E2 is in December of next year now, right?
Yeah, I saw that. I got the email and I saw that. So that's that's good. That's good.
Yeah. Well, and I was worried because they moved it back to March of next year.
Right.
And I'm like, the way things are, there's no way it's going to happen. I seen they moved to December, but honestly, C2E2 is probably going to be like my first con appearance because I set the Kickstarter as the stuff will be delivered by April just to give myself time. Because listen, everything's done. Yeah. Anybody that's watching this, it is 100% done. Yeah, the book has been edited.
I want it done ahead. That's the last thing I want to worry about is the story and the actual book. Because you have enough to worry about with the shipping and the coming and the going and all that other stuff.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. A lot of these projects that go on there is, hey, I want to write a book. Would you buy this? Yeah. I don't want people to get that idea at all from this. The book is written. It has been edited. I have the edited version back. I'm editing and finishing up with that. All of the artwork is done. Everything is done. All I have to do is send it to the printer, get it printed. If we hit the stretch goal to get signatures, I will drive to each one of the artists from Branson, Missouri, where David Faught lives, to California, to Arizona, to Florida.
He was in Branson. Branson is like where all those places to see the stars is, right? Isn't that good? Like the Osmonds have a place in Branson. Yeah. That's really
Dolly
cool.
Parton.
Yeah, we have a good time in Branson. I like all those stars. They were
it's only 2 hours from my house.
All of them were on TV in the 70s. So this is the only shows I watched, Yeah. Andy Williams, the Osmonds, Dolly Parton, all of them. So very cool.
Yeah, and that's like 2 hours from my house. I live about 50 miles west of St. Louis. Okay. And like I live so country. When I put Union in, it brings up Union, Springfield, Missouri, which is hilarious because Union is 50 miles from St. Louis. Right. Springfield is 250 miles from St. Louis. So how does Union, Springfield, Missouri even exist? Yeah. So I was like, so that's why it says St. Louis. I live 50 miles west of St. Louis, but I'm like, people are going to go Union, Springfield. They're going to look it up and like Union's here and Springfield's way 2 hours this way. And they're going to be like, this dude isn't real. Yeah. But no, the book is done. It's ready to be sent off. That's where David Faught lives.
That's what he lives. have it done and ready to go to print. And
It's ready to rock.
One less thing for you to worry about.
And I set it for April just because we
Yeah.
don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
They're talking all these lockdowns and the shutdowns.
Yeah.
And the worst case scenario, I included a digital with all of them. And everybody will at least get the digital,
Right.
the books. You know, I'm planning on hopefully end of February, beginning of March. Everybody will get everything because I have to wait for everything to be shipped to me.
Right.
But we don't know what's going to happen with the shutdowns. It could delay things. And the last thing I want to do is say, oh, you're going to have your books in February. And then everything's late because of the shutdown. But immediately people are going to be like, oh, you said you would have this. And
what I've seen with Kickstarter is they're pretty flexible because they know, you're not Marvel, you're not DC, you're Image. So if you tell them, this is what happened, they're pretty good with it. You keep telling people as it's going along, so it's not some total shock.
Oh, we're on day 2, and I've already got 4 updates, I think, on the...
Yeah, you're good. Yeah.
I'm a mega communicator. That's one thing you'll ever learn about me is I mega communicate.
Yeah, that's
good.
Good.
I'm like, hey, this is what's going on. Hey, guys, thanks for here. I love that. Like, there's the worst thing ever is when you commission an artist, and you're like, hey, I want to do this piece. And they're like, oh, okay, I can do it in 2 weeks. And then you message them, and they're like, all right, this much, and we'll get started on it. And then, you message them for 3 weeks, and you're like, so, hey, do we have any preliminaries? How's it going? And it's like, cricket. I'm like, dude, if you haven't had time to get to it, just tell me that.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's all you got to say. And I'm like, cool, we're communicating.
Right.
But, when you give me the cold shoulder, I'm like, whoa, you know.
Just let me know how it's going.
Let me know how it's going.
Yeah. All right, Russ. I appreciate your time. Like I said, you're a big-hearted guy. I'm sure I'll be catching up with you in 2021. Definitely a C2E2. I really had fun at that show, and I met Kara there, and I think there'll be a lot of people that I know in general there if I'm not there myself, if I come as just a fan. But hopefully I can get a table there too. So we'll commiserate. But I love what you do. I know your story, dude. I pray for you and your family. I know what you go through. And
I appreciate it, brother.
Anything I can do to help your whatever you're working on, or you just want to talk or whatever, I'm here for you. All right.
Dude, I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for being on tonight. Everybody that watched.
Usually, I know you're so busy, you don't even have time to talk. But if you need to, just let me know.
I appreciate it, man.
All right. And we're going to make it. We're all going to make it together. That's how this country's going to work. It's going to work together.
Yeah, we're going to be the ones to light each other's fires.
That's right. Not separate, together. Because we can do it. They cannot stop us when America is united. They just can't stop us. They're not as interesting. Sorry, Joe. I know Joe's over in England. You're interesting, Joe. But we have so many different ways of entertaining people. So much imagination, so much spirit in this country. And I'm not going to break into tears, but when you and I are like that, that's everything. So,
it is.
All right. You need me, you know where to find me. Everybody, I backed it. It's brilliant stuff. Get on there. Joe's laughing at me over in England. I'll be coming over to England too, Joe, when this is over. Because I got a lot of I shot a film over there, and I have a lot of people that want me to be in stores over there, but their stores are so picky about putting a comic in that I'm shipping, comics over there. And of course, with the exchange, with the postage, it's ridiculous. I feel guilty shipping my comics over there, but there's a show, actually 2 shows I'm interested in, and I will get over there eventually. But there's just so much to see and do, Russ. When this thing gets flying, you're gonna be looking. You're gonna go. I know. I forgot his name now, but Corey. Is it Corey? He does a show, Comic Chat. He does a show in Florida. You know him. You know him in Florida. Jim Noble's in Texas. Wendy's in California. Kara's in Arizona. I mean, we have this network of people now, and every time I'm talking or working on a project, you're like, dude, we just all need to do a con where we all go to the same con. So wherever you go, I'm in Jersey, I'm in Philly, I'm near New York. Wherever you go, you're going to know somebody. And you're going to take that book with you, and you're going to have a good time. And life's going to be, we're just going up from here,
Yeah, Yep.
It's gonna be a lot of fun. But you've done the work, you've done the time, you've done the suffering. It's time to get it out there and get people excited. I'm
It
excited.
is.
So, all right, Russ,
Thanks, buddy.
I'm gonna let you go. You get some rest. Take care of your wonderful family. And anybody who's listening, like I said, get on the Russ train. This is some good stuff. Very good. All right, man.
All right, man. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Yeah, you take care.
You too.